Stories are probably the most powerful thing in your tool belt of persuasion, both for getting other people to do what you want and for getting yourself to do what you want. I'm Nathan Frazier,
And I'm Brett Venot.
and this is Mindset and Mastery. Okay, Brett, today we're going to be covering secret number 3 in the Joe Vitale's 7 Lost Secrets of Success. And this one is speaking in parables, speaking in stories is what I'd like to focus on. And the reason why I'm so excited about this one is because I love using stories in my sales messages, in my emails, in my promotions, because stories are amazing for getting people to give you control over their thought processes for an extended amount of time. But I wanted to start this episode off with a quote that he has from Bruce Barton at the beginning of this chapter, and it is, "Money has a perverse habit of evading those who chase it too hard and of snuggling up to folks who are partially unmindful of it." And this is so weird because this is one of the things that I've learned on my journey. When I chase money, when I'm constantly looking after or looking for get rich quick schemes, when I was constantly trying to figure out, how do I make rent? How do I make money? I was always stressed about it, and it always seemed to evade me. But once I got into marketing and started working for people that have very high level, highly successful businesses, I noticed that most of them don't worry about money. And so I tried it for myself. I was like, okay, I'm just going to start living like I already have my next rent is going to be paid no matter what. I already have enough money coming in. And for me, at least, that's when the money started flowing in. Once I stopped worrying about it, once I stopped chasing it, was when it started actually flowing into my life. And it reminded me of somebody trying to catch a dog. I think of like the old Elmira on Tiny Toons Adventures. She's always like trying to suffocate animals. She's always trying to like, I want to hug you and pet you and cuddle with you, and chasing the pet around, chasing the animal around. When you're chasing the dog runs away from you. But if you just have like confidence, if you just say, hey, I got this treat in my pocket, this dog is probably going to be attracted to me, the dog runs up to you. It seems like most areas in life, whether it's relationships, whether it's money, whether it's success, whether it's animals, when you chase something, it runs from you. But when you say, hey, I've got what you want, and I'm cool and I'm confident and I believe in myself, that stuff starts coming towards you rather than running away from you. And I just thought that was an awesome parable that he started off this chapter with, and I'll just kind of turn it over to you and let you take it from there.
Yeah, so I read all these chapters a couple of times, and I read that and I said, what the hell does this have to do with anything else in the chapter? But listening to you tell the story, it is about being soft and indirect, right? When you hit people over the head with a message or a call to action immediately, or you approach people cold with your great offer, or what super influencer you are, whatever it is, right? That's probably not going to resonate with most people who are being bombarded with canned marketing messages all day long, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you go on Instagram and you scroll through there, every third thing is an ad at this point. So instead of being direct, deliver your message indirectly. Deliver your message patiently. Not like this girl who's suffocating dogs. I've never heard of this person. I thought you were talking about Cruella de Vil for a minute when you said she was always suffocating dogs. But I'll take your word for it. And that heavy-handed approach is not going to work with a lot of people because they have fatigue to the heavy-handed approach. If it was the first time that anybody out there ever encountered the heavy-handed approach, maybe it would work. But at this point, people just have a kind of blindness and deafness to it. So if you've done what we've talked about in the previous 2 secrets, you should really have a story that you want to tell. And you should really have stories about what you're doing that you're passionate about telling. So I think that, like, if you're working in sequence here, the storytelling part becomes easier, right? Because you're signaling a kind of passion, a kind of interest, a kind of investment in what you're doing and in who's doing it, which is you.
Mhm. Yeah. And just to kind of drive home the point, barking orders at people, telling them what to do is kind of like chasing the dog, but having stories to pull people in is kind of like having the treat in your pocket. And I think there's a couple reasons for that. Number one, stories are impossible to ignore, just as part of who we are as a species, how we evolved, the way that we passed on life lessons before we had text and before we had video and all of this stuff. It was campfire stories where the elders told us about things that we needed to learn, and think parables about the gods and the stars and the spirits and all of the stuff that helped us understand the world around us. Stories are also a way to live through exciting and dangerous moments without actually putting ourselves in danger, so we can get the lesson without actually having ourselves be placed in like mortal danger. So as part of like an evolutionary part of our existence, stories have this ability to grab you and pull you in. And they also allow you to adopt an idea as your own. If someone is telling you a story, if you're telling someone else a story, when the story clicks, when they're able to say, "Oh, I get it. It's your idea now. It's not me trying to force my idea on you." When I tell you a story and you come to the conclusion yourself because the story helps you realize, "Oh, wait a second. Now it's your idea," and you adopt that idea. It becomes part of who you are, how you think, the lens that you see the world through. And it's not me forcing an opinion on you. It's you coming to the opinion yourself. So stories are so powerful for that. And they also give you the ability to grab attention of an audience, of people that you want to lead, people that you want to get behind your goal, your vision. Having good, powerful stories that pull them in is a great way to grab their attention and get their buy-in as well. So for all of those reasons, understanding how stories work, understanding how you can utilize stories to bring people over to your cause, to your vision, to your whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish in the world, to rally the troops that want to fight and defend the hill that you've decided to plant your flag on. Stories are so powerful. But I also kind of wanted to talk about how powerful stories are for ourselves, the stories that we tell ourselves. And this is something that we talk a lot about in the Mindset and Mastery weekend seminar.
Yeah. Before we move on to that, I do just want to say this is something that I've tested under tension. I don't know if you, Nathan, have ever argued with somebody or maybe an entire group of people about things that were political or philosophical or cultural, but I have. And I had, a standard approach many, many, many years ago, over a decade ago, of being combative, of talking down to people, moralizing, doing ad hominems, using talking points. And I found that you can do and now for something completely different kind of diffusion of a tense situation just by saying, well, let me tell you about when I was at point A and now I'm here and this is the story about what was in between. This was the transformation of me going from one place to another in my thinking. Kind of takes away the other person's like enemy avatar that you are and just always were this person that is at odds with them. If you can tell a story about how a point of view that you're contrasting to their point of view actually evolved through some kind of life lesson, that can be really, really useful. And that's when people don't want to accept what you're saying. They don't want to agree with you. They don't want to give an inch. So if it works under that kind of tension, it should at least be experimented with under less hostile circumstances in trying to present yourself and in whatever you're trying to garner attention for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If it can work with people who are your polar opposite, imagine the power that it has for people who are already on the fence leaning towards your side.
Absolutely. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about the internal though storytelling.
Yeah, so this is a big part of what we talk about on the more in-depth mindset and mastery trainings, is how a lot of our internal stories, the stuff that we talk to ourselves about, the stuff that we tell ourselves, about the world, about the people around us, about what we're capable of doing, about how things will end up. And a lot of these stories are unconscious. They're stories that we formed for ourselves when we were 5 years old, 8 years old, 13 years old. They're stories that our parents told us. They're stories that our teachers told us, our politicians told us. And they become like our subconscious programs that we say we go to ask the girl out, but the last time that we asked a girl out, she laughed at us. And so we have this story about, if I approach this girl, I'm going to get rejected. And my fear of rejection prevents me from asking her out. So this story that we might not even realize we're telling ourselves holds us back and disempowers us and tears us down. And we don't take much time to think about the stories that we tell ourselves. Are they lifting us up, or are they tearing us down?
I even think saying the stories that we tell ourselves is a bit, I totally get what you mean, but I think it's a bit of a mischaracterization, because they're kind of coming from some place that is less than conscious within us, but they're loud and they can be persistent. I remember early on in my work in education and child psychology hearing a quote that was something like, the voice in which you're spoken to as a child is the voice you have in your head as an adult. Right. So if that voice is mostly coming from authority figures like parents who might not always have the softest touch or the most compassionate approach to problems that children have, certainly there's plenty of examples where you're not getting that soft touch in school with the authority figures there. Those become sometimes quiet, sometimes more forceful, often persistent voices in our heads as adults. So when we're young, this is something we've certainly talked about before, more things that can happen to us, more bad things that can happen to us are going to seem traumatic, right? As we get older, we're better at protecting ourselves. We're better at escaping bad situations. We have more life experience and wisdom. So the same bad things can happen and they don't hit us in such a, shocking and lasting kind of way. But when those things happen and we're very young, we have to make meaning out of those situations. So we come up with some kind of story that we tell ourselves that explains that situation that occurred when we were young. Usually, if it's something like, I'll just give an example. If it's something in the family, when we're very, very young, we really need our parents to be competent to survive. We don't know that. We can't write that in our diary at night when we're 6, but it is definitely something that is present within us. If they are dysfunctional, children will often internalize that as something must be wrong with me. It's the classic, like, it's my fault my parents got divorced kind of thing, right? It's a very simple example of this. The story has a purpose when we start telling it to ourselves at a young age. It's about survival. But eventually we have to figure out how to let that story go. I think that's the really, really important thing, to be carefully auditing what we might just catch going on in the background of our thoughts. I do this 3 times every day. I was driving a half an hour ago. I had some really shitty thought. I went, whoa. And then I said it out loud to say, okay, this happened in my head, but this is not me. And I don't even remember what it was now. Maybe because I dealt with it instead of letting it just, beat on like a drum when it wants to. So, yeah, I think that being more conscious of the stories that were maybe still in our head, told to us through some kind of circumstance long ago, and then we formed a meaning, and we have to change that meaning, audit that meaning, question that meaning, and ultimately get rid of whatever that pattern or belief is deep within us.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of times too, the stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves, or the negative self-talk, the stuff that we say, oh, you don't deserve this, you're not good enough for that, you won't be able to do this because of whatever. If we were our best friend, and like a really good best friend, somebody who really had our own best interest at heart, and we heard somebody talking about us the way that sometimes we talk about ourselves, we'd be like, yo, don't talk about my best friend like that. There's no way we'd let other people talk about us the way that a lot of us talk about ourselves inside of our own head. And so I think understanding how powerful stories are in influencing the actions of other people, and then understanding how powerful your own stories are and how much influence they have over your own actions, really being conscious of that. And then, like you said, examining it 2 or 3 times a day, stopping and asking yourself, why am I telling myself this? Is this serving me? Is this helping me get to where I want? Is this helping me live the type of life that I want to live? And then maybe examining where the story came from. And then the next step in this whole process is figuring out how to write better stories for yourself. And that's a whole different episode, but just, I guess the main takeaway that I wanted to leave people with is understand how much influence a good story or a bad story can have over other people and have over yourself.
Absolutely. So Joe Vitale does it again. I'm reading this chapter and I'm going, I don't like this. There's a section in there called How to Sell Bad Products. And I didn't like that. He tells a story about these two, I think they're copywriters. One's name is Cables and the other's name is Sackheim, and how they sold like really dumpy books to people by personalizing the outcome of the books. Instead of saying, in this book, you will learn A, B, and C, they wrote copy that was like, this book changed my life. I'm a totally different person than I was before. And these, crummy books became bestsellers as a result of that. But if you flip that example around, right? Like I'm trying to think, like the crummy book in your head that you have a better story to tell about once you realize that it's there. And yeah, maybe this isn't crummy. I thought that was he really again, big picture stuff from a long time ago. And I don't know how old this book is. Do you know how old this book is? I didn't even look at when it was written.
I'm not exactly sure when it was written either, but to your point though, flipping the story around or flipping the situation around, maybe you've got a really awesome story, but the copy that you keep repeating to yourself is, this book sucked, this book didn't do me any good, this book has no value. And it's a book that could be amazing if you just looked at it through a different lens, told yourself a different story about it. Your life can suck, your life can be horrible, or your life can be amazing, depending on the story that you're telling yourself, the value that you have to offer to other people, the way that you could impact other people's lives could be incredibly positive or incredibly negative, depending on the stories that you're telling yourself about yourself. So yeah, just the power of a story is one of the most magical, one of the most powerful forces that I can think of.
Yeah. And again, this book turns out to be timeless wisdom. Somebody was describing it, or somebody was asking me about it in my community. And I said, so far, it seems to be about how to be a better marketer and copywriter for the media environment that is the inside of your own head.
Yeah.
Like that's what everything gets kind of distilled down to. And I really like that.
Nice. All right, Brett, thanks again for joining me for this episode. And if people want to get more episodes and some extra goodies that we have for them, where's the best place to go?
Right now, the best place to go is mindsetandmastery.com. I've put the podcast up there so you can go and take a look at all the podcast episodes. Of course, you can find us on YouTube, on your favorite podcatcher. But if you want to type in one URL, make it Mindset and Mastery, see the podcast. And really relevant to the conversation that we've had today is the North Star Avatar training that we put together. It's right at the top of the home page. You just put in your email and it is yours immediately. You don't even have to go to your inbox. It's yours immediately. And you can watch it and a lot of the things we say there will probably, I think, resonate in a new way after listening to some of the conversations that we've had on the podcast.
Absolutely. All right, man. Until next time, I will catch you later.
Catch you later.